Hey folks, wanted to touch base. I haven't really done much on Instagram lately, but I wanted to show you guys what I've been into lately. No, it's not just playing with kids' toys. There's a very specific thing about this. This is called the tensegrity model. This pretty much mirrors the human body. The rubber bands are the connective tissues in the body. The dowels, as you see, are like the bones, and if you can't tell, none of the dowels are connecting. They're not touching. They are suspended in this geometrical form because of the rubber bands and the configuration of the dowels. That's the same thing as the physical body. And so people like Naudi Aguilar, all the way back to Buckminster Fuller, have been talking about this called biotensegrity. It only operates functionally when you have functional posture, functional movement and gait cycle. And a lot of people, they just focus on the physical aspect of this. And for me, I'm not into just fitness. I'm into how fitness integrates into mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. And what I mean by that is a lot of what we do. I'll show you a book that I'm reading, Neurosculpting by Lisa Wimberger. And she talks, there's this specific chapter in here where she's talking about the role of the body in reshaping the mind. She's talking about all these stressors that we go through in our daily lives that the body makes real. So we're not being chased by a tiger like maybe we would have, our ancestors would have. We're just late for work, but the body translates it as the exact same thing. And when that happens, adrenaline releases through our body, a cascade of different hormones and neurochemicals course through our body, and all the connective tissues, unless we have some kind of practice, like a deer, if it gets attacked but then escapes, it has a process of shaking and tremoring, and that moves and processes everything through its body, so it moves away from all the connective tissues and it gets eliminated, mostly through the urine. Well, if you almost get into a car accident, but you don't, and you're totally fine, your body is perfectly fine, it's not, because the psychology of feeling like you're about to get into an accident causes adrenaline to rush through your system. And even though the cars didn't even collide, and your body seemingly is fine, there was no damage done, that adrenaline, if not processed and moved through the body, will become, it will basically make the connective tissue tacky, very sticky, and it'll stick together with one another. And if this happens too much and you chronically have like an asymmetrical posture, then you almost get stuck. All the rubber bands, all the fascia, get stuck in a fashion that starts to deform the way your form actually operates. And this is super important. It's not just because you want to look good and have symmetrical posture. It's not just because you want to look fit or feel fit. It's also your spiritual fortitude, your conscious awareness is directly linked with the physical apparatus that it operates through. That's your physical body. So when I talk about things like spiritual fitness, that's really what I'm talking about. I'm not into trying to work on my beach bod. I'm, in a sense, mostly working on the instrument that, in a sense, allows for more or less of God, depending upon how attuned it is and the practices that I engage in. So, like I said, there are psychological things that you can experience that will cause your posture to come into a dysfunctional alignment, and that will impinge upon, let's say, like if your hips are just slightly out of alignment, then that'll cause your spine to have an irregular curve, and the cerebrospinal fluid that bathes your brain with things like DMT, albumin, all these other neurochemicals that go all throughout the brain and cause you to think differently. If you are having psychological things that you're not processing through, and it's constantly having this impact on the body, eventually you're going to see people with like asymmetrical faces, their form is very dysfunctional, and that will have an impact on your psychology, on your emotions, and on your spiritual path. Now, Here's another book that I'm reading, Quantum Science of Psychedelics, the Pineal Gland, Multidimensional Reality, and Mayan Cosmology. Now, all of those things are very near and dear to my heart. And the reason why I want to get into that is because they talk about in this the function of the pineal gland. This guy I'm already talking to, potentially interviewing him soon. He's talking about multidimensional reality. We have access to that, but you have less access to it if your body is not in alignment. So your spirituality will be deformed if your body's deformed. The Mayan cosmology part is pretty cool. In a sense, you see this serpent up at the top, not much different than this guy that I was inspired by on December 21st, 2012 in Chichen Itza at the Mayan Pyramid, where I had this download that I had to ink it into my skin. The main thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to this is when you're talking about neurosculpting, you have control, conscious control over how your neurons build their architecture for your spiritual and conscious awakening. The pineal gland does not produce DMT. This is actually straight out of Rick Strassman's mouth. And Dr. Rick Strassman wrote that book, DMT, the Spirit Molecule. Because the two enzymes that are responsible, or at least that are capable of turning tryptophan into DMT, are in the pineal gland, he supposed that, well, the pineal gland should be producing DMT. So that became a big rumor. It was speculation at the time. And then there was a 2013 study by, I think, it wasn't Stephen Barker. It was a researcher out of the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. And the probe that they used picked up brain matter, and they determined, the pineal gland does make DMT. It actually doesn't. They discovered later in the 2019 paper out of University of Michigan that it doesn't. Now, why am I talking about DMT in the pineal gland and brain sculpting? Well, the pineal gland sits right at the top of your brain stem. So if you go directly back into your brain, in between your ventricles, you have the hypothalamus and the thalamus on either side. You have the pituitary in the front and the pineal in the back, and a little up from that. And if you have a posture that is out of alignment, right, the geometry is messed up, then that's going to cause for dysfunction all the way up into the brain. Specifically that area, that the top of the brain stem, where you have that as part of the reptilian brain, but right in between the ventricles. So the reason why I'm talking about this, the pineal gland does not produce DMT. However, the fact that it does produce melatonin, and that causes for our sleep cycles and temperature and things along those lines, it will start to impact the way that your neurology actually communicates amongst one another, and with your gut neurology and your heart neurology. And if you have a posture that the shoulders pitch forward and you kind of sink in, that's going to cut off up to 33% of your oxygen supply. And that is going to cause a physiological change, a chemical and physiological change, where you are constantly in panic mode. We obviously don't want that. But these are the things that I've been getting into lately. And there are exercises that I'm working on that aren't mine specifically, but I'm tailoring them from other people that I've trained with, like Rafe Kelly, Esther Gokle, Naudi Aguilar, all the way to Paul Chek, having done a lot of his exercises. These exercises, they're not just for getting you into physical shape so you can look good. They're actually there specifically for your physical vessel to be able to allow you to get more clear with, why are you here on this planet? What are you doing with this glimpse of life that we're given? How accurately are we moving our actions towards that goal? Or are we dispersing all our energy in the little stuff that doesn't matter, even though we know what we should be doing with our time? If you don't have a proper gait cycle and posture, then the way that your brain, your neurons, and the way that they are sculpted, the architecture of your neurology operate, are going to be drastically limited. So what I'm going to be doing here over the next few weeks is coming up with more exercises that are directly in line with times of the day that you work on them, things that you should expose yourself to, meaning light, natural light. Should you have an empty stomach, or should you have eaten recently? What types of things should you have ingested? Yes, we'll talk about psychedelics. Cannabis is on that. Even tobacco is on that. Tobacco is a very important plant medicine. And then we will start getting into the Mayan cosmology of it all, because this goes deep. And I've been studying this for quite some time, and it's finally time to start taking the mystery school that I've been working on for years and years and years into the public, and showing you guys that there are many practices that we could be doing, but we need a little bit more guidance than just having an exercise to do. We need to match it with how soon or long have we been awake? Did we just wake up? Are we about to go to bed? Again, have we eaten? Did we just take a cold shower? What kinds of botanicals are floating through our system? And is it worthwhile to do it in conjunction with art, like singing, vocalizing? Should we have read anything? Should we be up in our head thinking about all the stuff that we've read or just watched on Netflix? These are all super important, and these are the things that most people don't get into enough to show you how to best use their practices. So I'll show you, and I'll try and give credit to everybody that I've harvested practices from, and there will be a protocol that we can follow, and then hopefully there'll be some kind of Instagram challenges I'll be able to shoot you guys. But much love to you all. I hope you guys are navigating all this chaos outside in the world of social media, the elections coming up. It is September 11th. There's a lot going on in the collective psyche, and I think this is perfect time. This isn't, we need to do this work despite all that shit. We need to do this, and all that shit is telling us this is the time. Now is the time. 2020 is the year, and we have everything we need. We have the breath, we have our thoughts, we have our community. There's nothing beyond the free stuff that God already gave us that we need to use to begin putting real life practical solutions in place for not just ourselves, not just our family and our community, but the world. We really need to start realizing that we are in a dance of opposites, the yin yang. Everything we call our enemies are really our lessons. Everything we call our fears are really our teachers. So these are the things that we need to begin working on, but we need a protocol to help us know how and when to use these protocols. And I will be a resource, and I'll have resources here on Instagram, on Facebook, and also on my website, benjosephstewart.com. I love you all. I hope you guys are navigating 2020 well and with a lot of hope. Peace.